Hello, welcome to my review of MegaMan, the game from 1987. For the remainder of this review, I'll refer to the game as MegaMan 1. Before I get into the review, I just want to fill you in on my process and the rubric I use when reviewing games like this. Primarily, I consider modern fun factor. How much fun is the game to play, to look at, and listen to? If someone were to play this game with no knowledge of Mega Man or retro gaming, would they have fun? That's the question I'm going to try to answer when I consider the modern fun factor of this game. I'll also consider the context in which this game exists as a piece of art. Where is its place in history? Or what relevance does it have in the modern gaming landscape? And lastly, I'll consider a bit of personal bias or nostalgia in my review of the game. So with that rubric out of the way, let's get into the modern fun factor of Mega Man 1. Controlling Mega Man is interesting. He doesn't seem to speed up or slow down like Mario, and his jump is pretty static, though you can short hop. You can completely understand Mega Man's movement within a few moments. This isn't a platformer with particularly joyful or nuanced movement like Mario or a modern game like Celeste, but it isn't bad movement by any means either. It offers enough control to get through most of the moments without there being frustration or a sense of unfairness. But Mega Man is not just a platformer. Shooting is a big part of the gameplay. The shooting in Mega Man 1, even just using the basic Mega Buster, has a satisfying immediacy to it. Where Mega Man is looking is where he is shooting. It's simple and fun. You cannot shoot angles or up or down. It's just left and right based on the direction Mega Man is facing. Immediately when you begin the game, you're given the choice of which among 6 robot masters you want to go after. This approach still contains a novelty to it, and it's equally charming and intimidating to see all the robot masters looking at you. The images of the robot masters feel like wanted posters, and they give a clear goal to the player, even without the context of reading the instruction manual. These guys need to be taken down. The way Mega Man controls and the ability to pick the level you want to begin come together as more than the sum of their parts. For me, the gameplay is immediately captivating and enjoyable. Mega Man feels like a true underdog when you start the game. Enemies come at Mega Man quickly in each level, and he recoils in pain whenever he's hit. He's physically moved backwards. In contrast, even though enemies can kill faster in Mario or Contra, the battle is more visceral in Mega Man. Also, contrasting Mega Man 1 against peers like Mario and Contra, there are few enemies that can be taken down in one hit. It often feels like Mega Man is being pushed around by foes while blasting them away. It's much more dynamic than many games of the era. The levels also change quite a bit even as you play through the individual levels themselves. At times, they scroll left to right like a more traditional platformer, but at other times, levels are divided into individual screens that present a challenge to be solved. The dynamic level design along with the enemies make it feel as though Mega Man is fighting his way through a gauntlet to get through towards the foes at the end. Though I'll get into the context later, it's important to mention that if you've played a lot of retro games, Mega Man's levels do feel different. You're not just running from left to right. It feels as though you're in a location that goes up, down, left, right, and you're fighting your way through enemies that push Mega Man around. The way these larger and tough enemies come at Mega Man add an added weight to the boss encounters. When you finally reach these foes that you've seen at the beginning of the game, there's added weight. And though the boss patterns are relatively simple, they all attack viciously. Multiple times I would barely make it to the end of the level, only to be killed by the boss in seconds. When you manage to kill the bosses, you will see Mega Man's other signature design decision. You get new weapons from each boss that you defeat. Some may look down on this, but for this review, I used a guide to figure out the best order in which to take down the bosses. This still provided me with quite a bit of challenge, though some of the bosses did become pushovers. It made me feel as though Mega Man was becoming some sort of ultimate robot hunter, an underdog becoming the alpha male dog. Overall, the big picture, the bones, the foundation of Mega Man's design and gameplay are brilliant. They're still captivating and interesting today, and they offer enough variety that it's easy to see how this was able to be fleshed out and built upon for many entries. But some notable problems with Mega Man 1 hold it back from brilliance. Particularly relating to the platforming, there are some platforms in the game that disappear, and I can't necessarily explain why, but they just feel bad to play through. Particularly in Gutsman's level, there are platforms that move left to right and then drop down at moments that are telegraphed. You can see when the platform is going to drop out from under you, but the timing still feels weird. I don't know if Mega Man falls faster in these situations than he does from a normal jump, or if I was subconsciously expecting to have an extra frame to jump. Either way, I never got used to it. Also, there are disappearing platform squares that have a rhythm to them. And again, though I knew exactly where the platform was going to go next, the timing just never felt right for me. There are also enemies in the game that themselves are platforms that Mega Man needs to land on. Their movement patterns felt nearly impossible to predict, and at times I was at the mercy of where they would go, and I would just simply wait. There's also a hidden gun that shoots platforms in Mega Man. You need this gun to beat the game, and it's hidden behind blocks that you need Gutsman's ability to move. When I played the game, I was interested in this item when I saw it, so when I had Gutsman's ability, I got it out, but I didn't realize it was needed to beat the game. When I realized that this hidden item was needed to beat the game, it felt strangely designed and kind of haphazard. The moment, late in the game, when you need to use this platform gun is awkwardly designed. You're at the bottom of a hole and it's kind of hard to aim and shoot, and if you run out of this weapon unknowing that you would have to use it to beat the game, I can only imagine it would be extremely frustrating. The weird platform gun part and the worst section of the moving platform enemies are both found in the later half of the game after you've beaten the robot masters. These levels that I'll call the Wily portion of the game is just overall less charming and less fun than the first part of the game. You no longer have the dynamic options of which levels you're going to pick, and you're not really earning any more abilities past this point. There are points where the enemies even feel misplaced and unavoidable, or they're just going nowhere. And there's some really weird boss fights, particularly the fight against the Mega Man clone that just seems to randomly charge you. Also, the final boss against Wily is strange. He's in a super generic hovering robot that isn't particularly fun to fight. For a game with such iconic boss designs and robot designs, this final fight is really underwhelming. Also, though I am a fan of good resource management in games, and will mention how this game has a significant place in history due to being a game that factors resource management in, managing and correctly using the right weapons through this portion of the game is extremely frustrating. And I cannot imagine how people back in the 80s were able to figure this out. Wily's levels aren't horrendous, there are fun moments, and it's not a total disaster. But it is still far less fun than the rest of the game, and it's kind of sad to see the game end on a poorer note than how it began. The big exception is that in Wily's levels, you do encounter the Yellow Devil. The effect of the Yellow Devil breaking apart and rebuilding himself on the other side of the level is really interesting and still visually striking today. It's a challenging boss fight and really does require memorization, but I still found it fun, and honestly, it would have made a better end to the game than the Wily fight. Also, the Wily levels do have the Mega Man boss rush where you fight all the previous robot masters, and it's fun here as it is in later Mega Man games. From a visual standpoint, Mega Man 1 still holds up. The overall level art and enemy art is better than average and has its charm. The truly iconic artwork is in the character design. Mega Man himself is so simple and so charming, it's no wonder that they use the same sprite in 8 different games. And the Robot Masters are also incredibly well designed and are still fun to look at today, particularly Gutsman, Cutsman, and Iceman, who are equally menacing and cute. Again, the design of the Yellow Devil is iconic. The music and sound design in the game are decent. The blaster noise and the level select noise are great, and the tune that plays when you pick a boss is really incredible, and it's easy to see why they would use it so often throughout the series. The music that plays in the stages is fine, but it is a bit forgettable, and some of the later songs are a bit grating, particularly the high-pitched noise that it plays when you're fighting Wily. So before I move on into considering the context in which this game exists, I'll sum up that the modern fun factor with this game is very strong. There are frustrations in the design and the controls, and some low moments near the end of the game, but overall the game is still fun to play, it's still fun to look at, and it's fun to listen to. Now, the context in which this game exists, its place within gaming history, is interesting and I believe adds a lot of value to playing this game today. There's something amazing about those weird Simpsons episodes that aired in a variety comedy show prior to the proper Simpsons show being picked up by a network. They have such a strange charm to them, and it's interesting knowing that they are a warm-up round for one of the most successful franchises ever. We're seeing genius practice. Looking at Mario Bros. That came before Super Mario Bros., or the top-down Grand Theft Auto 1 and 2 that came before 3 can give the same sense of wonder. Mega Man 1 really is a practice round, or a rough draft for the genius that would follow it, and it's a remarkably well-formed rough draft. Most of the elements that make the Mega Man franchise great, the ability to select bosses and levels, the items you get for defeating the bosses, the great art is all here. And though it's not as incredible as it would become, it's amazing to see how good of a job they did in their first try. This is also Capcom's first original console game. Prior to this, they were focused on the arcade, and it's interesting to see how this game particularly represents a lot of the traits that would go on to shape Capcom's game design. Consider that the game drops you, the player, immediately into a menu in which you're forced to select a picture of a character. This is a reverse of what fighting games do, where rather than picking who you will play as, you will pick who you will go to defeat. Also, think about how this game factors in item management, particularly the ammo of the weapons that you have. This is a novel game design mechanic in the 80s, and it's something that became a standard in the Resident Evil franchise. Or when you consider how overall the game's character design has this cool design to it, but also has a cute playfulness to it. This is a Capcom signature and came up throughout many of their games over the years. This game also has an interesting place in history when you consider it came out the same year as Street Fighter 1. Both Mega Man 1 and Street Fighter 1 are early drafts of game franchises that would become amazingly popular over the years. And though Mega Man 1 is more similar to Mega Man 2 than Street Fighter 1 is to 2, it's still a draft and is interesting. And it's interesting to consider how Capcom really is taking this year, 1987, to warm up, to become something far greater than I think people would have ever expected in 1987. Now, Mega Man's place in history, I believe, adds value to the game. When you play it and consider what it led to, it really does make this game more fun to see, and it's almost like you're kind of experimenting with the game design along with the developers. In our modern gaming context, it's really hard to separate Mega Man 1 from its far superior sequels because Mega Man 1 is usually sold together in a package with the better games. Is Mega Man worth trying for most people? Yes, but is it worth putting in the time to finish it for most people? Probably not. If this game were sold on its own, I really wouldn't recommend paying much of a high price for it. You also have to consider that there are really far better action platformers readily available today. People who are not attached to Mega Man or interested in the place in history that this game occupies will probably get a lot less enjoyment from it. Considering nostalgia and personal bias, I have to mention that Mega Man was my favorite game franchise as a child, and the old Mega Man cartoon show was my favorite show, but I never played this game. I briefly played it as a teen and hated it, and didn't beat it until now as a full-grown adult. So while I have tons of nostalgia for the Mega Man franchise, this particular game holds no significant value to me in terms of memories or nostalgia. If anything, I probably have a negative bias against this game, since it is noticeably more ugly, harder to listen to, and less fun than some of the great games that followed it in the franchise. Overall, I would give this game a 7 out of 10. I think it's still fun to play, it still presents a lot of interesting ideas and things to look at, and fun moments to play through. I believe that if you like platformers, you can find a lot of enjoyment in this game. Now, if you're a gamer or a Mega Man fan or interested in game design in general, the game becomes far more compelling when you consider the context in which it exists. Overall, I recommend people try this game if they're interested in this style of game, though not necessarily make the commitment to finish it, especially when you think about how the later portion of the game is worse than the earlier parts of the game. Now, as I wrap this video up, I want to say thanks to everyone for watching it. Also, thank you to YouTubers who have posted long plays of this game. I did borrow gameplay footage for this since I do not have a capture card for my Nintendo Switch. There's a link in the description of this video to the video from which I borrowed this gameplay footage. If you are interested in Mega Man reviews or critiques or nostalgia towards the Mega Man franchise, please consider giving this video a like and subscribing to my channel. Thanks so much for watching and have a great day.